Take me.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Mind Over Madness podcast. And this week's a little bit different. I'm not joined by my normal friend. This time I am joined by someone else. We thought we'd explore the world of OCD, and I'm very, very kindly joined by Josh, as always.
Hey,
There he is. Hey up, mate. Hey up. How you doing? So Josh is also helping me with music and stuff like that in the background. More on that in the future. But Josh, very kindly, I asked him if he would mind coming on the podcast and doing an episode on kind of what it's like to live with OCD and talk about some of the aspects of living with it, because I think it's a topic that is underappreciated. Before we get into it, though, I did get inspired to do this podcast by a gentleman by the name of Anthony Padilla. If you know him, he used to be a part of Smosh. He is now an interviewer, and he did many videos like this. So his channel is linked down below. It was inspired by him. I took the idea, yes. So, on that note, how are you doing today, Josh? How's things?
I think I'm doing all right. It's not, just every day at the moment.
It's a fair point. I mean, life is what it is right now, considering everything going on.
Yeah.
No,
Not touch too much on that, though, yeah.
yeah, that is not what this is about.
Yeah.
I talk enough about, news and politics and stuff in a normal podcast. This is like a different thing. It's a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you for coming on and doing this. It's really kind of you, really cool.
No problem.
So, yes, right. Let's get into it then, because I've never actually. I'd just like to point this out. I've known Josh for a couple of years. I've never really quizzed him on his on OCD. So this may come. I might be a really bad asker of questions, interview, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I kind of just see this.
It
as
might be a really bad answer at the question.
yeah. So I just see this as a friend talking to a friend. That's how I'm viewing it. So that's how we're going to go with it. So anyway, we'll get started. So I'll start with the first question then, Josh. As long as you're okay and you're comfortable and you're happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, James. You've done this to me.
What
But
have you done?
what have you done? Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just whatever comes to mind. However you want to answer stuff. If you don't, we'll move on. That kind of thing. As always. So the first question is: when did you learn that you actually had OCD?
To be honest, I'm not actually completely sure. I think I was diagnosed sometime in primary school, I think. But we reckon it, in retrospect, I was born with OCD. So, so I identified it when I was in primary school, but I've had a lot of the issues before then that came up to it. So I kind of known for quite a long time that there was something off.
Yeah.
So yeah, about primary school, I can't remember exactly what year, but
You must remember it to the date. No.
The date was.
I was in the middle of eating my sandwich at lunchtime, James.
Yeah, no, I've always had like difficulty with like fitting in and whatever. It was probably partially down to that and everything. So yeah, that was about when I found out.
Oh, fair. So even being that young, then you could still identify that there was something more to it than just what had been going on.
I don't think it was just me. I don't like. I was kind of a bit odd than compared to other people anyway, but so I didn't really have as much opportunity to kind of like see myself as too different from anyone else. But yeah, I think it was more my parents saw something and they had me checked out about then because it was getting worse essentially.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
But then that I found out and I started having, well, I say I started having help. We kind of just identified it and, because it's quite a tricky disorder to treat.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I've spoken to therapists or counselors, but one thing that kind of is quite common is that OCD is one of these things that takes longer to treat. So often it's not really addressed properly within the small amount of time that we're given from like counselors and everything. You know, I kind of need longer to go through it. It's because it's very difficult.
Yeah. It's very.
So
Well, it's a very different thing, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it's very
not like,
particular to each person.
yeah, it's not. It's not like someone. At least from my limited knowledge, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but as you just said, then OCD affects everyone very differently who has it.
It does. I was just going to say anything like most of what I say in this is going to be my experience with it. So there can be quite a bit of overlap from person to person with OCD, but that's mostly because of the obsessions, which are the things that your brain obsesses over. It's like the bad thoughts that you stress over, and the compulsions, which are the more physical side of things, where you do things. Well, it's not even necessarily just physical. I've got mental ones as well that you do to kind of suppress the obsessions. You know, and that's the biggest overlap. How they present in each person is different.
Yeah, of course. So that leads me on to my next question, actually, quite neatly, surprisingly neatly. So if you were to describe your OCD to someone that had never even heard of OCD before, how would you describe it to someone? Because you just basically did a very good job then. But how would you portray it to someone that has never heard of the condition? And
very briefly,
yeah,
I'd say it's what if turned up to 11.
Oh God, what if turned up? That is a good way of describing it. Yeah.
So like that's quite vague as well, though. You know, I think it's a good thing. It's like a good canvas to start painting on. You know, I can kind of add the details on that now.
Yeah. Cool.
So like a typical thing that people tend to think of is hand washing. So people with OCD don't tend to like washing their hands. They wash it because they wash them because they can have a sense of what would happen if I don't. You know, what kind of health problems would I have? What kind of germs would I be spreading onto handles? What dangers would I be presenting to myself and those around me? Kind of thing. So we wash our hands so that we no longer present that problem, and that problem can persist even if there's something mildly dirty about our hands.
Yeah.
You know, and that's also why I can't really I can't go out and use like public toilets or anything, you know, because if I'm to wash my hands there, I'm not familiar with the sink or anything. I'm not, because in my mind there are germs then coming off the tap itself into the water and onto my hands.
Oh wow! And
even then, if there was, they don't really do bars of soap anymore, but they used to do bars of soap, and obviously germs would probably stay on there in my mind.
Yeah.
And even if I'm doing the pump stuff, there are germs on the pump.
It's like every little detail, let's say, for someone that doesn't have OCD, that does their day-to-day life, as you said, washing hands, even just picking up a bar of soap to wash your hands. For you, it's a very different experience because there are so many other factors that your brain is going through when you look at something like that.
Yeah. Imagine if normal people or average people or whatever, they would probably process a lot of their fears or whatever, a kind of not always, not at like a fully conscious level. They do it kind of subconsciously as well. You know, that's that kind of like thing about their brain. It processes information. But I think with OCD, it's kind of, I think studies are showing that there's a bit of a disconnect between a couple of parts of your brain. So some information is not going to the deeper parts. So my own speculation is that because of that, I have to process more of what was supposed to be subconscious on a conscious level. Yeah. Essentially. So like there are some fears that I have to think about and use logic for and kind of like take safer ways around. So yeah, like a lot of people with the hand washing again, when they wash their hands, they easily enough can just say, you know, that's good enough. I know they're clean. That's fair enough. You know, no more worry about that. That's, you know, put in their head. With me, I have to wash my hands until they're clean. I have to until I feel they're clean, not until I know they're clean. So even if I've used like an antibacterial hand wash like 5 times, you know, if it doesn't feel clean, it's not clean in my head.
Yeah.
So
it's a fascinating, it's just fascinating to me because obviously, you know, if, for instance, when I wash my hands, I wash them, I rinse them under the water, that's enough for me. I can't imagine being in a position where it's kind of like, even if I thought, oh, that's enough, it's immediate. It's just, it has to be clean. It's that idea that it's not just, I'm going to wash my hands for, I don't know, 30 seconds, 35 seconds, or whatever. It's like, no, I'll wash my hands for 5 minutes if I have to, until it's, so it's, I don't know. So you obviously talked about like kind of the soap and things like that, touching door handles and things like that. So leads me on nicely to the next question, which I had, which I feel like is going to be an interesting one for us to talk about. But how does it affect you in your day-to-day life then? There's kind of 2 parts to this, because we'll obviously come on to how it's affected you since COVID started, but in your, forgetting about COVID for now, how is it kind
I'll disregard that for now.
Yeah, how does it affect your life, you know, your day-to-day life?
Drastically, honestly. I kind of have to...
Pepper, everything is drastic.
It's very stressful. It's very stressful, but like obviously I've taken steps to be able to manage it a lot better, but it's very difficult because, like I said, it can negate logic. You know, I know that a lot of what I'm thinking, a lot of what it's telling me, is just, you know, bollocks, for want of a better word.
I mean, I've never ever considered this a family friendly show, so you're good. Bollocks is fine.
Bollocks is fine.
It's fine.
No, no, but like I know that it's not real. You know, it's just that there's just this nagging thought that tells me otherwise, and I cannot ignore it. It's like not trying to blink.
Yeah.
Basically.
Now
you know,
I've said that, I'm blinking. It's like an immediate effect. It's like an immediate effect, though. You are right. You know, it's that thing of the moment you start, you tell someone, you know, you're breathing. All of a sudden, you're thinking about breathing.
Yeah, you're conscious of it.
Yeah, is that how kind of you would describe it in sort of those sort of moments?
Yeah, OCD for me anyway, it gets worse when I'm aware of it. So yeah, when I'm doing things that takes my mind off things, that's the ideal for that. Just to kind of help understand something. Whenever I when I touch something, I have to kind of be okay with it in my mind before I let go. When I do touch something like that and I can't let go, I'm doing this now. I say that I'm stuck. Yeah. Basically, so I'm stuck where I'm, and I've always said that, like even like not long after I was diagnosed, probably even before, I can't remember, but that's always been an issue there. I can't remember what we were talking about just before I started explaining.
It's fine. I don't like, if you ever feel the need to go off and sort of follow a trail. Absolutely.
I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. That's the thing.
That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's cool. It's more information. That's the thing. Is like I'm really I want to delve into this because it's something that I found. Obviously, knowing you for so long, it's, you know, I only see a tiny fraction when I speak to you occasionally on here. When I see you in person, I see a tiny percentage of it, and some people never see someone with it. So.
That was the thing. It was the day-to-day stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was like, how does it affect your day-to-day life? So we'll go like morning, kind of lunch, and then dinner. I was
explaining the stuck thing because I get stuck a lot. I get stuck a lot. If I accidentally touch something, then I have to get myself okay in my head before I let go. Even though I know that it's not going to do anything. I know that it's not going to do anything, but it's just something in my brain that tells me that something is. And I think that also partially comes from the what if there, because I'm there thinking, what if something bad happens, you know, if I don't listen to these urges, to these thoughts, if I don't perform these rituals. But yeah, just on a day-to-day thing. Yeah, it affects my day-to-day life by making everything take longer to do.
Yeah.
I dread doing quite a lot of stuff that people find easy to do
Yeah.
because of this. Like, I there are quite often times where I even dread going to the toilet because I know that then I've got to wash my hands afterwards. I've got to make sure that, this and that.
Could you go into like, so let's say it's the morning, you've just woken up, you've had a wonderful dream, but now you've got to get out of bed and you've got to do the stuff in the morning. How take us through that process? Like what kind of averagely would happen on a daily basis?
Well, yeah, the first thing I would do is go to the toilet,
Yeah, of course.
as most people do.
Yeah. So I get up, I go to the toilet, I do my whatever I got to do, I wash my hands and stuff. Maybe takes me 1 to 2 minutes. Let's say a minute and a half. Let's meet in the middle. How long would that process take you, for instance?
It used to take a lot longer, but like I think at the moment, at its best, it probably is about 2-3 minutes. So that's not as bad at the moment. But at its worst, it could take half an hour, 2 hours. I don't know. It depends.
It depends.
Partially because one of the better ways for me to deal with this is to kind of get lost in my mind while I'm kind of like doing nothing there, But even like with washing my hands and everything, I used to use hand wash, like once, like all around my hands and everything, do my thumbs, between my fingers, my nails and everything, and then I'd do it again and again and again. Obviously rinsing between each one and everything. Actually, yeah, no, I did that, and then before rinsing it off, I put on another layer of that, and then do that ritual again, and then rinse that off, and then put another one on, put around my hands, and then without rinsing them off, I put another layer on it, and I did that another 2 times, 2-3 times before I was satisfied with that.
Wow.
So yeah, because this like. So, my hands are a bit sensitive now, so
it's fine. This is something obviously we're going to touch on later on, but of course, talking about stuff can sort of, I guess, trigger a reaction, and kind of makes your mind go off. So again, only what you're comfortable with. Make sure that you're happy. Obviously, that's just one part of your morning. So how does going about food and tea and things like that, like how are you dealing with that on a daily basis?
Well, first off, the surfaces have to be clean enough. I can't put anything like a bowl down for cereal or a mug down for a coffee or anything unless the surface is clean enough. If they're not clean enough, I have to prepare it while I'm holding the bowl or something. And even if it is clean enough, I'm still there making sure after I finish preparing it that the surface is clean enough.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure that is the case because I know that I'm touching the bottom of the bowl then.
Yeah.
So any potential germs that were on the surface is now on the bowl, which is now on my hands. So there's that. And even with fridge and everything, making sure that that's clean when I open it. During the pandemic, I know that I don't have the virus or anything, but I'm still making sure that I don't breathe in places like the fridge or where the coffee is, where the sugar is, or anything. So I'm overly cautious about that kind of thing. And yeah, that's just preparing that there as well.
I think it's incredible to me because the way you're describing it, the way you talk about these processes, most people would see these as just, well, it's part of the day. I do this so easily in the morning and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
There were so many, as you were talking about the bottom of the bowl, and you're like all these things are flowing through your mind as you're doing it. That, I mean, That must be anxiety-inducing at its worst.
Yeah, I think
At best.
it does cause a lot of anxiety. OCD is a disorder where it causes anxiety and is caused by anxiety. So it creates a vicious cycle, basically. So yeah, it's best to find a way to break that cycle and then try not to let it build up again. But it is quite difficult when because when it comes to like cleanliness as well, I know that everything has a different level of cleanliness and different types of cleanliness to me. So so to me, I can't cross-contaminate anything basically. So I can't touch something dirtier than something else and then like touch that, because that's making the second thing dirty. And then if I've touched the cleaner thing first, I'm not as all right touching the dirtier thing, because that's then making my hands dirtier. Then I got to wash them anyway.
It's like one thing after another, after another, after another, after kind of, it just builds and builds.
Yeah, if I could manage it, then yeah, I'd probably wash my hands after every different thing that I touch.
Yeah, wow.
But that would be very stressful. So I try not to touch as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was saying, there's not just different levels of cleanliness, there's different types as well. So even if something is as dirty as something else, because they're dirty with two different things, I can't cross them.
Wow. So could you do an example of something like that then? Just out of, just as an example, so sort of so obviously we talked about, putting things on different surfaces, obviously one surface to another, immediately that's, one cleanliness to another kind of thing. So would it be the same for, let's say you pick a book off, let's say you take a book off your bed, you put it on your desk. Would that have sort of the same effect?
That depends on if I see my bed or the desk is dirty.
Right, okay.
But I think a good example probably with what I was saying would be like if I was to touch the floor inside as opposed to the floor outside.
Right, okay.
So like to me, they're both kind of quite equally as dirty, because both get like walked over and everything. But obviously in indoor, people either have like slippers or bare feet or whatever, whereas outside people have shoes on, but there also tends to be a lot more people outside, and as well as just animals, dirt when it's grass or anything, so to me, like I said, indoors and outdoor floors are both as dirty as each other, but in different ways.
Yeah.
So
right, okay, I understand that now. That makes more sense to me now, because I was always very kind of, do you see, like, as you said, two different floors, different areas, but do you see them the same? And would you say you see them in the same way, but because of different reasons? Like, as you said, that's it. You see them the same kind of dirtiness, but it's different types because it's a different way.
Yeah.
Wow, that must be very stressful to deal with, because that's just one example.
That's why I try not to touch as much.
Yeah, again, I want to make this clear to people. That's just one part. Everything has its own sort of would you call it like maybe a sort of mini ecosystem in a sense in your mind as how stuff works and stuff. And
think of like you're kind of color coding everything, so that every different level of cleanliness is like a different shade of the same color, and every different type of cleanliness is a different color.
Yeah.
So some things might be purple, and some other things might be purple but a bit lighter, but something else might be completely green.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And you see this with everything that's around you.
Yeah.
Even bits of air as well. So like if someone's like kind of breathed, not even necessarily at you, but if like someone's breathed like in your kind of direction, even from a distance or something, you're then wondering whether that breath actually has anything in it that would affect you.
Yeah. Well, that leads quite neatly onto the second part of this question. I know you briefly touched on it. Obviously, with COVID, you're very cautious about where you breathe, even more so probably about what you touch. But in the midst of a pandemic, how has that affected you with your OCD and your daily life now? How much has it changed and made things either more difficult or easier?
It's turned up the cleanliness a fair bit. So it's kind of affecting other people in the house as well. So I try to regulate anything that comes in the house being cleaned. You know, anything else that we're touching fairly often, like the dinner table. You know, there are, like, whenever something falls on the floor, I have to have it cleaned. Whenever it's not, like, there's kind of like a small area where it's deemed kind of clean enough for me, and if it goes below that, I have to have it cleaned, kind of. And yeah, since the pandemic, that has just meant I do that with a lot more stuff, and the area for it being cleaned is shrunk.
Yeah.
So yeah, just got to make sure everything's as clean as possible. But at the same time, I struggle with cleaning because I struggle with then, like, because I know there are cleaning products that are toxic, for example. And if I touch, like, a thing of bleach, my brain is then telling me that even if I'm washing my hands, I've still got bleach on my hands, and that if I eat something with my hands, then like a sandwich or something, I'm then eating bits of bleach, and that will cause me harm.
That's got to be. Oh wow.
That's the stressful thing about OCD, is that it's in your brain, so it knows how to get to you.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, I'm very, very. I hope you don't mind me saying it in this way, but I'm obviously quite lucky not to have OCD as a condition.
No, that's fine.
But
I think, yeah, I can probably see myself a bit more as unlucky for having it, but, like, there are good parts of it.
Yeah,
but,
that leads me on to my next question. Actually, perfectly. I'll get back onto the point I was going to touch on a moment ago, but that actually leads on perfectly to my next question. So, what does?
Keep doing that.
Yeah, you are a god. I'm telling you. What?
I'm not going to say no, but
the next question was actually going to be: so, what does OCD mean to you? And, like, so specifically, what does the condition mean to you? Is it just part of you? Is it something that's just there? Is it a
pain in the arse?
I mean, that's the most blunt answer you could have with it. I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. I can I mean, you've only told me some stuff, and I'm already like, I just couldn't. So yeah,
well, that's not touching, like, the facial stuff that I do and everything.
Oh, of course, yeah. What do you want to talk a little bit about that kind of the, or maybe we'll get onto that a bit later. Actually, I think that is coming up. But yeah, so OCD to you just a pain in the ass, or is there any other kind of things that it means?
Well, that's the blunt way of putting it.
Yeah, that's the very quick way of putting it.
It's I think it's an experience. It's a different kind of experience. You know, I don't want to see it as like a disorder. It's just a different way that my brain works that I have to learn with living with.
Yeah.
So, like, it could be just as easy for me to say that I could see it as another personality trait, but it is a personality trait that causes a lot of stress.
Yeah, undeniably.
But yeah, like it is going to be a part of me for, well, essentially the rest of my life. But I'm aware that it's also something that I can learn to manage to a degree eventually, that it can appear even to myself like it's non-existent.
I think that's very inspirational. I think that's a very brave road to go down as well, trying to learn to manage it and stuff. Of course, with any kind of mental health, it's not easy, but I can't even imagine with something as complex, let's say, because I think that's another thing. I don't know if you would agree, but people tend to think that OCD, as you said, very rightly so in the beginning, is people just think it's, they just wash their hands. It's so much more complex, and there's so much more to it, that learning to manage it can be, I mean, that can be a lifelong,
Do you remember when I said that it tends to be one of the longer difficulties to treat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the most complex, but
you're not just kind of deconstructing everything and trying to get over it, but you're also trying to do that. You're not trying to kind of convince someone that what they're doing is just irregular. I mean, most people, a lot of people with OCD know that it's irregular.
Yeah.
But you're trying to help people that know that it's irregular and that know that it is just something in their head, essentially. Like, you're trying to help them kind of stop doing things that they have as big of, if not more, of an urge to do than trying not to, than blinking.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think people are going to understand just how difficult it is without actually having it.
Yeah.
But that is what it is, simply.
Yeah.
To be honest,
it's a lot. There's so much to it that trying to describe it in a brief period, I don't think is actually possible. Especially, as you said quite rightfully in the beginning, it's very different for each person who has it. There are different things they do, different routines. You know, there's so much to it, and there's different versions as well, if I'm correct in saying as well.
Typically, a lot of people with OCD tend to avoid any kind of circumstances that would cause them to go through any of their particular rituals. Like when I said that I sometimes avoid going to the toilet sometimes. I don't like leave it till it's like dangerously bad or anything. But I avoid it as much as I can without it being uncomfortable, because I know that it can be quite stressful to wash my hands. Just turning on the tap, turning off the tap. You know, I can't touch the tap. Well, I can only touch the tap in certain places because that's the only place to me that it's clean enough. I have to turn off the tap while I've got positive images in my head, because otherwise I've got to turn it back on more than I did last time. And one of these days, I swear I'm going to break the tap.
Just takes the tap off. Shut it!
It's just going to flood the room. The top's just going to fly off. It's just going to, basically.
Yeah. Wow. So to piggyback off kind of the what is OCD to you, how does it make you view the world then differently, do you think, compared to sort of me, for instance, the average day kind of person? You know, how does it differ? I mean, I think there's an obvious answer here to much more stress.
Yeah.
I think that's a recurring theme, but, you know.
I think, like I said, it's kind of like that color coding thing that I said.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see the world, except I don't see it with colors or anything. I kind of, it's more like an automatic, it's like a real-time spreadsheet or something in my head. Like, this is clean enough, this isn't clean enough, you know. If there's something that's not clean enough, you know, how do I make that clean enough if it's even worth it? You know, and even then it helps a lot with reassurance as well. If I'm not sure, or if I need to touch something and I really don't want to wash my hands, sometimes I ask someone who I reckon would know. And if they've reassured me that it is clean enough, then chances are I don't have to wash my hands, even though I've asked like 5,000 more times afterwards.
Yeah. No.
But sometimes asking that amount of times, to me, is easier than just going ahead and wash my hands.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, next question I have for you. So what's the most challenging part about living with OCD? I know a lot of people would say what's the most difficult part and things like that, but I don't want to put it in such a negative light. I know challenging can maybe be seen as negative, but what's the most challenging thing on a day-to-day basis with it?
I think I probably could have said the misunderstanding that people have, but honestly, like that doesn't affect me until it actually, you know, I'm talking to people and they don't really get the problems as much and whatever. But
of course, yeah.
To be honest, getting things done is probably the hardest thing. Like, getting anything done is quite hard when you've got so much going on in your head, you know, that tells you that there's a danger around every corner. You know, like OCD is a fear-driven disorder, essentially. You know, it causes anxiety by bringing in fears and plays it to a point where you know that it's not real, but it's real enough for you to believe it to a degree where you don't want to risk it.
Yeah. So
I don't even know if I expressed that properly there, if I lost my words.
No, not at all. No, that's fine. I mean, so essentially the most challenging thing about it is just everything, because everything is so heightened. It's not like you know,
It's easy to deal with when I'm around people that don't know as much about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's like a thing that happens in my brain. It just turns it down a bit while I'm out in front of other people or something. I still do some things.
Yeah.
You know, I think some people would probably see me walk a little bit weirdly occasionally because of the way it makes me check certain things.
Yeah.
You know, like, am I wearing my clothes properly? You know, just it is frustrating. It's exhausting. It's something, like I said, that I have to just live with, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I need to I need to learn to deal with it. But another thing that really kind of makes it difficult is that it evolves. The OCD that I have now is different to what it was 10 years ago. And even then it was different to what it was, like, I was going to say 5 years before that. Like, when I was a child, the OCD used to, I used to have to weave my, like, when I was in the car, I used to have to weave my vision up and down, like, above and below lampposts, basically. You know, and I had to do that, like, not necessarily throughout the entire journey, but if I was looking out the window, I'd have to do that. You know, and then I got over that, and at some point, I could no longer look at the sky without going into a coughing fit. and it wasn't even just like, you know, like, because it could have been like an allergic reaction or something, but no,
it's just every time like... he's allergic to the sky. Every time he looks at it, it just coughs.
I'm allergic to a lot of things I see.
that has got to be the biggest pain.
No, in all seriousness, it was more to do with it was this feeling of if I breathe in, I'm taking in what I see as in like a part of me, you know. And I had a fear of like deep space or whatever at the time. So when I looked at the sky, and if I breathed in, or even if I just held my breath, because that's a neutral thing, I put it towards the worst case scenario. So if I breathed in, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. I didn't know what I was breathing in at, looking across like the galaxy or whatever, you know. So to counter that, I'd go into a coughing fit, almost voluntarily, essentially, as a means to expel that.
So it's kind of like you're getting that out of your system so that you can just carry on. But that's your way of it's like your body and your mind's way of reassuring yourself, okay, I'm fine now, I can carry on.
Yeah, you can just kind of like think of it as like smoke or something, really. You know, you breathe it in, it's not good for you, so you cough it out.
Yeah, and that's... you know, even though that may seem a bit strange to some people, to you and to OCD, anyone probably who suffers with OCD, those kinds of things are very much on the same level as you said. You know, smoke.
For me in particular, a lot of the traits of the OCD are based on a form of logic. Like, for example, when with the touching thing, before I was worried about germs or whatever, because I was not always worried about germs. That was developed as well when I started college. But I started not being able to touch anything without being okay in my brain before I let go. That showed up not long after I was taught about friction in school.
Yeah, right, okay.
So I was taught about that, and then the OCD would tell me that if I don't let go in a certain way, or if I don't do this, like if I touch anything wrong, then it's going to cause a big spike in friction and cause a fire, basically. So a lot of this was started from fear of fire.
It's shocking how much it can change and develop. As you know, you pointed out, you know, it's not the same as what you had when you were younger. I didn't realize it could so drastically change over time.
Oh yeah, no, that's that's why whenever I went to a counsellor or a therapist or whatever, I always went with the goal of receiving help with anxiety rather than the OCD itself.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's both fueled by anxiety and causes anxiety. So if I learn to manage the anxiety, that would lower the traits. That would lower how drastic the traits were.
That's a very intellectual and intelligent way, I think, of going about it, and I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I think that's
the main problem I had is that a lot of these people were focusing too much on trying to overcome the OCD itself rather than the anxiety.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, whenever I overcame any kind of traits with the OCD, another one would just take its place.
Yeah.
Basically,
it's like you would manage one of them, and you would get to a point of where you could manage your day-to-day life and possibly not let that kind of trait happen continuously.
Yeah.
But then another one would just immediately spring up. It's like, in a way, I know this might seem a bit strange, but it's kind of like weeds in a garden. You get rid of one, 3 more sprout up in its place.
Yeah.
It's just a constant infestation of these different traits that are bombarding your mind continuously every day. Is that?
So I suppose an apt analogy for that would probably just be get rid of the garden.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the anxiety is like getting rid of the garden that it can
cover it in cement. I'll just have a footpath. Like that's. I don't
but even then, there are like plenty of gaps that the weeds would like pop up in and everything. You know?
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, like we've touched on earlier, it's a complex disorder.
There's so many different paths and branching narratives in a strange way that it can go off, that it's just it's impossible to get everything about it from one, or even let's say 100 different people that suffer with OCD. It would be impossible to get the majority.
There are as many different varieties of OCD as there are people that suffer from it,
which is incredible. That's a lot of different varieties. For those of you who are not aware.
So, my advice to anyone who wants to help anyone with OCD is to understand how it affects that particular person. Don't try to help every single person with OCD. I've had someone who told me before that they understood how OCD works because they studied it. You know, and that I kind of had a mixture between anger and I just cringed, you know, because
that's so cringe.
There are similarities.
Yeah.
Like I said, there are. It is true that there are similarities, but they, like I said, they appear in different ways between people. You know, like the OCD that I have is completely different to the one that almost anyone else has.
Yeah.
I will have traits that other people probably have, but overall, it's different. If you want to help me with the OCD that I suffer with, then learn my traits. Learn what helps me. Learn what doesn't, and try to avoid that.
Yeah.
You know. So don't just learn from me.
Yeah.
And then take that to someone else. You've got to relearn with them.
You've got to take the time to understand that person's triggers and thoughts and things like that, to be able to.
Luckily enough, I'm actually quite lucky to mostly be around people that are quite open with the OCD and everything. Even if it was just a generalized disorder, but I'm lucky enough that anyone I've lived with before, most of them have been very accepting towards the fact that I have it, and they've asked questions. Asking questions is a great way of doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, would you are you in one of those mindsets that you'd rather people ask you about it so that you can educate them on your vision?
Yeah. If someone is open to help, then chances are they will be okay with opening up about it. And even if they don't open up about it, they probably just want help from specific people. They probably want help in a specific way.
Yeah.
Like I said, it can be seen as a personality trait. It's as different as it's as different between people, you know, as people are different.
Yeah. Absolutely, of course. Well, onto a little bit of a lighter part. Finally,
Sure.
is there a time where your OCD doesn't affect you as much? Like, are there times where, or are there things that you can do that lessen the burden that it has on you? So for instance, speaking on behalf of someone that suffers with sort of depression or anxiety, I find playing games or talking to friends, it takes my mind off it and distracts me enough to be able to kind of live a life to an extent.
That can be the case. However, there have also been plenty of times where I have been stuck within a video game.
Yeah. Oh.
So if I'm playing a video game or something and like the character is brushed up against the wall, I've then got to brush myself up and down the wall and whatever until I can move them away. You know?
Wow.
So it affects even me playing video games. It affects, even like with thoughts, it affects numerous numerous parts of my life. But I think, in general, yeah, when I'm happy or having fun,
Yeah.
Like most disorders,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to ignore at that point. Back like with what I said about the connection in the brain, it's not like there's no connection, but the connection is better with this particular connection is made basically through serotonin. So the more the better dose of serotonin you have, the less OCD is going to affect.
Yeah.
It's going to affect me. So essentially, yeah, it basically just means that the happier I am, the more mild it is.
Oh, right. Okay. So
it's not always the case. It's not always the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I'm into something quite a lot, I don't necessarily think about it as much, or it doesn't appear quite as much. But like that's kind of like a general kind of thing as well. I think a lot of the time people like I said, that's another kind of general thing with OCD. I think you could say that about a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, don't just quote me on that for everyone.
Yeah.
Just because I'm saying that it can be a general thing, there's also the minority there, if it is a minority, that it's not the case with.
Yeah.
And because on the flip side with with when it's easier is mornings. Mornings are easier for me to deal with than night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
I'm not entirely sure why, but it gets worse the later it gets.
Ah, right. Do you think that could be to do with sort of how long the day has gone and how many hours you've been awake and you've gone through loads of different processes and stuff?
Could be.
Just
I think thinking about it, it could be a case of like when you sleep, you have the REM cycle, so that's you processing information from throughout the day. What it could be, I'm only speculating. I'm just
of course,
thinking,
speculation.
But yeah, the OCD gets worse throughout the day because there's more information piling up that needs to be processed.
Yeah.
So then that gets reset as I sleep. That actually makes sense. I think, yeah. So I think, as the day goes on, there's more information that piles up and that needs processing. And I suppose you can think of it kind of like a funnel, basically. So the more that's trying to get in and at one time, the more it's just going to block up.
Yeah.
Essentially. So
just
you need to then sleep to just kind of process that.
Yeah.
And get that through.
Yeah. Oh, right. So mornings are better than nights for you.
For me, yeah.
Oh.
Like I said, that could be different with other people.
Again, it's that thing. If you have someone who is a friend of yours with OCD, talk to them about it. Educate yourself on it so you can be as respectful and helpful as you can be to the person.
Yeah, but no one is entitled to force anyone or to push anyone to open up about things.
Absolutely.
If anyone wants to open up, they'll open up in their own time.
Absolutely, 100%. Don't ever put someone in a position where they're forced to talk about it. It won't ever end well.
No. I'm a bit of a believer with like things can be like kind of compared to other things. Like in this particular case with science, one quite common law of physics essentially is if there is a force, there will be resistance.
Yeah. And
And in that case, if you try to push someone, you are more likely to get them to be less open with you.
Yeah, and resistant to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a very good analogy. I like it.
I like analogies.
I like it. So, right, the next thing we're going to be discussing, and it's kind of just going to be a discussion on it. Of course, I'm not very knowledgeable on this fact, so I'm looking forward to being educated. But we're going to be talking a little bit about OCD triggers and things that can trigger people with OCD. Now, obviously, I want to make this absolutely clear. If you know someone with OCD and you know their triggers, don't be a dick. Don't purposely
that's the worst
do the
thing.
triggers.
That's the worst thing anyone can do.
Yeah.
I don't open up about my triggers as much as I used to because of a couple of bad incidents where I'd opened up about triggers for awareness' sake, and they basically just took advantage of it, and they would use that trigger almost every time they saw me, thinking it was funny. It was funny at first, it's a bit of banter, and everything. I don't mind these kind of jokes at first. It's when it goes on and on and on.
So what is, to someone that has no idea what they are, what is an OCD trigger?
It can be something as simple as just reminding them about any part of OCD they have.
Yeah.
In general, try not to remind people that they have, OCD or particular traits of it, because, when they're not thinking about it, that's when, they're going to be probably the most productive. That's probably when they're going, likely, like I said, again, just me. Just
it's a tricky one.
Don't deliberately trigger people.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's kind of again, I'm not too sure if this comparison is warranted or even remotely on the same level, but I assume with someone with Tourette's, for instance, who has verbal tics, there are certain words, let's say, that are not accepted in society anymore, but these people cannot help it. If you are constantly pushing a specific trigger towards that person, they're going to inevitably say something horrible.
It's kind of like that. It's actually quite OCD is actually surprisingly similar to Tourette's.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a mild diagnosis in Tourette's, which I've never really believed in as much because I think a lot of it came down to like the facial stuff that I do, like the blinking and like I sometimes stretch my mouth. I'm trying not to do that now.
Again, don't make yourself uncomfortable. If you've got to do it, you got to do it.
No, because I know that when I start, it's going to be difficult for me to stop.
Yeah, of course.
It is quite similar. I think the main difference I had with this, and like I said, it could be a difference in like experience with people, but I've always considered Tourette's to be more involuntary.
Yeah.
Whereas OCD is more, you're doing it to satisfy an urge. I could force myself not to do any of this.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have to push myself. I don't necessarily have to blink to satisfy this urge. It's just
it's less tiring. It's easier just to allow it to.
Yeah, that's the point of the OCD is that it's less tiring to just do the compulsion.
Whereas with someone with Tourette's, it's impossible for them to stop themselves from doing something. Yeah. Whereas with you,
but they can suppress it. They can suppress it.
Yeah, but it's not good. I believe it. I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but it's very unhealthy to do that or something because it can make them worse, or they can have outbursts and that kind of thing. Again,
it can,
not an expert.
But in any case, it's always good to seek the best treatment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And don't take anyone with OCD that's looking for advice for anything with this or anything. Don't take anything that anyone says as fact. Yeah. If they're saying you should try this, you should try that, like you have to try it, whatever. Take it as advice. Yeah. It's ultimately your decision whether you do or don't.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
That's basically the same with me. People have suggested things to me for quite a long time, and sometimes I go through with it years later, because it's something that has come to mind that I wanted to do. But at the time, I wasn't ready or anything. And the amount of times the people suggest something to me that I'm just not ready for at the time. And it just makes makes me realize that I don't know. You're just not in the right position to do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not in the right place, you're not in the right place.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And again, it's that thing. If you are suffering with anything out there, it is always your decision on what is best for you, and that should be.
But with the triggers, just in general, just try not to trigger people. It's so a lot. I personally think it's okay if someone accidentally triggers me.
Does it unknowingly?
It's okay if they accidentally trigger me and if they learn from it.
Yeah. Well, like I know when I first met you, obviously I was a lot more rowdy, and I was a lot less knowledgeable as well. And I do remember there being a time where you were explaining kind of your triggers and things to me very kindly and very trustingly. And I remember I talked to you about it, and I said, so if I did this and I did the thing, I'm not going to obviously say what it is because I don't want.
Oh yeah, no, I know you well enough to know that chances are you're not triggering me on purpose.
Yeah, I did it because I'll be honest, I did do it. I did it in the beginning, and I remember I did it because I'll be honest, it was morbid curiosity. And I remember it did trigger you, and I felt very bad after it. And you were like,
"I know it's fine." People ask. If people ask, or if they're curious, I don't really mind.
Yeah,
it's when people are taking the piss.
It's when people take advantage of that situation.
Yeah.
So, if you were, can you describe what it's like to be triggered? Because obviously it is a sort of you're losing control of your own body in that sense. So, what's it like to be in that position? Being triggered. Describe that. Because I'm not to.
If I told you not to think about something. If I told you not to think about something.
Well, I'm already thinking now. I'm like waiting for you to say.
If I told you not to think about banana.
Now I'm thinking about an orange.
No, but that's not good. Most of the time, I suppose he's an exception to this.
Yeah, I'm weird.
Thinking about banana.
Yeah, you immediately banana, right? Yeah, it's like what's the time? You look at the time and you go, well, it's 1 o'clock. Well, think about 1 o'clock, and it's just 1 o'clock. It's just that thing.
Well,
you go. You point to
when
something.
When you're told not to think about something, you automatically think about it.
It's that classic thing. Don't do this. Immediately goes and does it. Yeah. So
it's as simple as that. You know, it's a similar kind of concept with that. If someone like reminds you that you have a particular trait with that, and then and just sees it as like a kind of like fun thing. I don't know. It's just just don't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Because the next question that I actually have for you is, do you have any repetitive behaviours? Because I know you've got a few, but obviously, again, I want to be very careful about how we discuss these, because I know some things that you do that are repetitive.
What do you think?
Be triggered. Well, yeah, I know you do. I know you do. But
what do you think?
So I have OCD, James. What do you think? Repetitive behaviours? Nah, that's not a thing. No. I just again, I'm trying to be very cautious with my words because I don't want to say certain things. Because I would say I don't want to say something and then it's kind of
Yeah. This is your curiosity. This is my answer.
Oh, it's my answer, James. No,
I'm saying you're welcome to ask what you like. It's up to me how I answer.
Oh, absolutely, of course. Again, I've always said it. If there's anyone that comes on here and they're like, no, I don't want to.
I think anything with my face, like I said, that's quite a big thing. The mouth stretching, the eyes, and everything.
Yeah.
That can be quite repetitive. I think, like I said, that kind of like went into possibly gaining the diagnosis for Tourette's. But yeah, it's things like that. It's the touching the surfaces that I can't let go of. Yeah. That happens quite often. Light switches are annoying. Like, I know because of this that light switches in the UK have like a safety thing in them, meaning they can't really like spark or anything like that. But there's still something in my head telling me that if it's at all in the middle, then it's going to cause like a fire or something. In case anyone didn't notice, fires are kind of a big theme with this.
Fire's like the worst.
Not as much anymore. But
you're the opposite of a pyromaniac. No, there can't be anything. Yeah. So with repetitive behaviours, can repetitive behaviours be triggered and stuff? Then I assume yes. I mean, I'm aware of this. So,
yes, again, if there is a trigger for that, um, like I said, almost any aspect of OCD can be suppressed, even just by not thinking about it.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone mentions it,
Yeah.
it's going to get worse.
I'm so sorry I got you to do this podcast. You're having to talk about it.
No, it's fine. I'm more than happy to talk about it.
Yeah,
I know that there's plenty of people that have been like curious about this kind of stuff before.
Yeah.
And I've explained about this kind of stuff before numerous times, and explanations have been different because I've been asked in different parts of my life. So my explanation now is different to what it was like one of the main last times I was asked. You know, and it's going to be different again in the future. I can almost guarantee.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it certainly is because I don't know.
Yeah.
But chances are I will get over some part of this OCD and I will move on to another.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes with the sky thing as well. I don't really have as much of a problem with the sky anymore. I still have issues kind of looking towards it, but
you and the
I'm
sky
a lot better man.
You're cool. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that, like I said, I've learned a lot to do with managing my stress.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I don't know if like this is a stress kind of sign, me flipping with my hair a lot, but
yeah, I know I have kind of stress triggers like that. Like when I'm, I think anyone could go back and watch any of these podcasts. You'll see a lot of the time I'm doing this sort of, this sort of stretching with my arms and playing with my hair. I can't sit still. I fidget. You know, that's always been kind of my thing in regards to it. So it's very, I think, apparent to me that there are similarities. Like OCD, a lot of people will kind of look at it and go, well, loads of people do that, but it's a very different version of that specific thing, because it's a compulsive thing. It's not like you're doing it because I'm nervous. I'll do it for 5 minutes and I won't do it for the rest of the day. It's like, this happens throughout the day.
I've also had people say to me, I know what you're going through because I also feel like I have to wash my hands or do whatever. It's like,
I was about to ask what it's like.
You feel like you have to. There are certain people who feel like they have to out of a sense of habit because of like a job they have or had, and they're not. It's kind of like suffering kind of feeling, really.
Yeah.
Just you kind of feel like you're suffering with this because I've been in places where like I remember being a child at one point and I remember being stuck in the bathroom. I wasn't in any like indecent position or anything. I was like just brushing my teeth or something.
Yeah.
I'd finished brushing my teeth, but I was stuck with my feet to the ground, so I couldn't walk anywhere. And at that point, I had less idea how to control it, so I needed help from my parents. I used to have this thing where I'd have like a small countdown, and then I'd have like a gentle push to kind of help get me going. And at this time, I was stuck in the bathroom and I was really struggling. Like it was in my mind more than usual. It was worse than usual. So I required help. However, I didn't really get it. I think it was kind of late at night, and everyone was just they basically just walked off, either getting ready for bed or they went to bed or whatever. And it got to a point where I was still stood there probably like 20 minutes, half an hour later, like pretty much just crying because I couldn't move. I needed the help. Even if I just had like, encouragement, or something, it would have really helped. But yeah, it was the lack of help at the time, and obviously it's not nearly as bad now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
I think as well as it's not really anyone's fault at the time. It was just unfortunate timing when that happened. Would you say?
I can't exactly remember the circumstances behind it. It could have even been a case if I just pissed off my parents or something.
Yeah, as children do.
Yeah.
But no. So that's just one example, and
Oh yeah.
That's a very difficult situation. Children and kids, and especially in the 21st century, growing up with all this technology and stuff around them, and what's going on. Being a child now, having OCD and being in a similar position, let's say, to what you were in.
Yeah.
that's just one example. There are so many different things. I'm sure that
Oh yeah.
bless your heart, you've had to go through as time has gone on with OCD and things.
Yeah,
That,
no, there were times where
as
I've
long
been
as, by
told,
the way, just to make this clear, as long as you're comfortable talking about this kind of stuff, because I know it can get
oh no,
it's
sure.
quite personal.
Like I've said before, if I was uncomfortable talking about any of this, I'd tell you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I just want to make
But
sure you're okay.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Right after we
That's
finish the
like,
podcast, you're like,
yeah,
I'm never talking to you again.
I don't do my realistic response, which is just be not
Yeah,
really
of
so
course,
sure about saying that,
Yeah.
or I just go, you know what, just no, fuck off.
Just look at me. No, fuck off, James. Fuck you. No.
Fuck off. Yeah. No.
Fair enough.
But I remember times when I was younger, like this was either before we had it identified, or it was as we were still kind of getting used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Where actually even years later, there was some family members that still believed that to some, like they accepted that I had it, but they were to some degree believing that I was just seeking attention.
Yeah. Do you think
You
that
know?
was out of lack of knowledge, or do you think it was that sort of mentality of what used to be raising a kid was kind of like, oh, well, that's just my kid being a kid, you know?
Well, to a degree, but like this family member was a member of the family that supposedly had OCD as well, not nearly as strong as the one I had.
Yeah.
But
Again, different levels,
Yeah.
different experiences.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's because essentially probably that it didn't affect them in the same way.
Yeah.
Even like it wasn't strong enough for them to really kind of let it bother them too much. They had like small traits as they were like growing up. They kind of grew out of it,
Yeah.
basically. So with me and my diagnosis is severe and chronic,
Yeah.
basically. I don't know if there's like a thing where all OCD is technically chronic or anything. I heard that fairly recently. But as far as I'm aware, when I had it identified, it was diagnosed as severe chronic OCD.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So having the strongest case of OCD in the family then, it's still difficult to deal with now, because even now, like, there's a difference between having OCD and being someone that is dealing with someone with OCD. I'm the only one in the family that knows what it's like to have it, especially as bad as I have it.
Of course.
But I also am the only one in the family, essentially, that doesn't know what it's like dealing with someone with OCD
Yeah.
as much. Because they've had my entire life, essentially, getting used to it.
It's like a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? It's sort of,
Yeah.
they can
They're
they can
two
understand,
separate roles.
Yeah, they can understand helping and living with someone with such severe OCD, but they could never understand living with it as an experience that you have every day. Whereas on your side, you know what it's like to live every day with it, but you have no idea how it is to look after someone with it. And it's where that kind of teamwork and love, especially from family, I think, where that support.
Oh yeah, no, I've been
the support
incredibly lucky with the family that I have. You know, like you met them, and obviously, like you get on with them as well. But
surprisingly,
Huh?
Somehow, I don't know how. I do. I'm very, very lucky to have met your family. They are lovely people.
Yeah,
and
I constantly feel like I'm blessed for being born in this family.
Yeah.
Some members I won't go into, but obviously some members I don't really want to talk to. But
of course, yeah, no. As I think every family has those individuals where you're like, ugh.
Yeah. The less said about that, the better.
Yeah, exactly. The less said about that, the better. But yeah, on to a bit of a more positive sort of note to come out of that section then. Have there ever been any funny moments then, you know, whether you were a kid or as you've got older, have there been any sort of more amusing or kind of moments you can look back on and go, actually, that was quite funny because of your OCD? Or has it always been, and don't be afraid to be like, no, it's always been a very serious, you know, condition to live with. You know, but are there little humorous moments in between, do you think?
I can't really think, looking back on it. I think off the top of my head, I can't exactly help but imagine what it would have looked like with me kind of looking up and down above like the lampposts.
Yeah.
I don't even know if my head
of
moved
course.
like that. It could have just been my eyes, but I
Yeah,
can
I was
imagine if
gonna say.
someone looked back or whatever at me and they just sort of going,
yeah. Of course. There's an initial reaction. That's another thing I was going to actually ask you as well. Do you get offended when people ask you about it or go, "Oh, you've got OCD"? Do you get offended when people turn to you and immediately go, Oh, is it just washing your hands constantly then? Like, say they're lack of educated, they're not doing it to be rude.
You would agree, but that's what caused the hand washing in the first place for me.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Like, okay, this is something quite important, I think.
Okay, go on.
Don't push on stereotypes to anyone with OCD. Don't push them on. I was okay washing my hands like a normal person before I went to college, and had numerous people asking me, do you have to wash your hands so much? You have to wash your hands. You have to wash your hands. It was that made me aware of like having to wash my hands. Well, and that became more of a thing with the OCD. By you, like, it's fine to be curious. It's fine to be curious. But I don't know, maybe ask them what trait they have that is most like a stereotype.
Yeah.
Rather than asking them about a specific stereotype.
Yeah, I think because stereotypes are so strong in any kind of formats, especially with OCD, I find, it's that people don't think to ask, well, how does it affect you? Instead, they go, do wash your hands. And it's as you said, it can be quite harmful because it can actually start a process in that person. And again, I don't know if you would agree on this. Maybe I do think there are ignorant people out there who just, perpetuate a stereotype. But I think a lot of people do it just because of lack of knowledge. They don't understand how that can impact someone or
Yeah, no, a lot of people do. That's why OCD is becoming a lot more kind of... there's a lot of awareness going on about OCD at the moment.
Absolutely.
Which I'm quite thankful about. But like there's still not as much mention about the fact that OCD is different between people.
Yeah.
There's a lot going into the cause of it. There's a lot going into how people can help other people and everything. But it's not really as much making people aware of, really fine details.
Yeah. I think that's why I wanted to do something like this with you, because I felt like not only am I being educated, like I've learned stuff doing this entire podcast now, but I've learned as well, and I'm very, very appreciative to learn that from you. Because obviously when I come round to yours after the pandemic and everything, and when we can actually go outside and live a life, when I come over,
it might be a bit longer for me than most other people. But...
Yeah, of course, absolutely, and that's why I wanted to be educated a bit more on it, because I find I am close with you and your family, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very lucky to be so. And I think when I come over, I want to be as respectful as possible to you. Like, I know I've given you hugs in the past. I know it'll be a different process when we first meet again.
You usually are, yeah.
So it'll be a different.
You've helped out a lot when you've been down. There are certain things, like I said, there are certain things that a lot of people find really easy to do.
Yeah.
There are some things that are basic to a lot of people, but I struggle a lot with purely because of the difficulties that I have. And that kind of stuff. Like, there have been things that you've helped me with that.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
It's only been a couple of years that I've been more comfortable making a cup of tea in this house.
Yeah. I remember when I first met you, you were... I wouldn't say completely against the idea of it, but it was definitely a lot more of a struggle and a much more of an uphill battle for you to even attempt to pick up a mug that needed to be used to make the tea, let alone actually making it. So the fact that you can do that now is a phenomenal step in feat, and absolutely you should be praised for it, especially with someone...
I mean, thank you very much. I've worked hard for the improvements that I've made, and I've still got a long way to go, but...
Absolutely, yeah, but... I would be remiss if I didn't say, the person you are today compared to when I first met you.
Oh, definitely.
You have improved tenfold over, and especially how well you're doing during this pandemic. I know there are certain things, obviously, that have, sort of keyed, but
I'm dealing a lot better with it now than I was at the beginning.
I think at the beginning, everyone panicked. I mean, look at the less toilet paper you could get.
I just didn't want anyone going out. Yeah, to a degree, absolutely. I still don't.
Yeah,
but. That's my personal view.
I have a sneeze waiting.
Just...
Sorry if my eye starts flickering. It's because I've got a sneeze that's like right on the edge. Right. So the last question that I've got for you, and it's the kind of the last subject that I want to talk to, is intrusive thoughts. Because I obviously I'm not very knowledgeable in these. I know the limited knowledge that I do know, some of the intrusive thoughts are not that bad, and as far as I'm aware, there are some that are genuinely some of the darkest things that probably a human could think of. And again, it's not like you volunteered to think these things.
No, definitely.
But they...
it's again like that, try not to think about this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except the main difference in this case is that like it can be a result of people saying don't think about this, but it can also just be spontaneous thoughts that came into your head.
Yeah.
You know?
And the thing is, aren't they linked with? I hope I'm not remiss in saying this, but they are linked with kind of the actual behaviours that come with OCD as well. Like for instance, having to maybe do a light switch or kind of.
I think intrusive thoughts can appear in that kind of respect as well, but it's a bit broader than that.
Yeah.
Like obsessions, I suppose, can be caused by intrusive thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
However, intrusive thoughts also cause pretty damning thoughts. Everything, like it's not an obsession, for example, to have a sudden urge, well, not sudden urge, but just a thought that like to run someone over in their car. Like an intrusive thought for someone would have been something like that. Like as they're driving along, they see pedestrians and suddenly their brain's like, I could just run them over. And then their mind would kind of be fixated on that for a little bit. And they would be kind of stressed out by the fact that their brain is just fixated on it.
Yeah.
And there are numerous other intrusive thoughts. Thankfully, I don't get a lot of these. I don't get a lot of intrusive thoughts in this way. But there are plenty of some of the worst intrusive thoughts that someone could have are things like to do with I don't know, incest, and stuff like that. Rape, murder, a lot of this kind of stuff. And these thoughts end up in the minds of genuinely good people.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a part of their brain telling them this. And this is by no ways I want to disclaim that this is in no way condoning people who actually go and do that or anything.
Yeah. There's a difference between having these intrusive thoughts and acting on them. They're very, very different, separate circumstances.
There's also a difference between having the intrusive thoughts and just thinking about it anyway.
Yeah.
Like even within your head, there's a difference. Sometimes it's not an obvious difference. Sometimes these intrusive thoughts actually do feel like they're thoughts that just pop into your head and they're actually part of what you think. But then you just can't get rid of them.
Because I hope I'm not. I don't say this and cause offence, but I feel like I've had some intrusive thoughts over my years and years of my life. But obviously with OCD there is a difference with the intrusive thoughts. I hope I'm correct in saying is, although me, for instance, I could have, one of those kinds of horrific intrusive thoughts, it's not, because as you said, not all intrusive thoughts with OCD are connected to the compulsion. So I have to do this thing, therefore the thought goes away. Or if I don't do this thing will happen. When you just have them, like for me, when I have them, it's just a thought that I can, disappears after a couple of minutes or whatever.
Well, you got to think about what intrusion is. That's the thing, It's intruding on your mental space.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got this kind of safe space in your head. And these thoughts are intruding on that and making you think about that, and it's not really going away.
It's like someone breaking into your house. It's not like you have a choice. Again, it's that
Basically,
thing of choice, isn't it?
Yeah, and someone breaking into your house is not making you put a gun on them. It's not making you break their arms.
Yeah.
In the same way that intrusive thoughts doesn't necessarily make you obsess about anything or cause you to carry out compulsions to get rid of it.
Yeah.
It can literally just be a thought that just persists. That can cause things like guilt, shame, a lot of these other things. And that is quite a damaging thing as well, because it's probably more common than we imagined that people are silently suffering through intrusive thoughts. And they're thinking that there's something wrong with them because of these thoughts and everything. And it does break my heart to think there are people just silently suffering with these. I mean, imagine young children with these kind of thoughts.
Things that people don't think about. People think of OCD and as you said, it's the stereotypical stuff. They don't realise that there could be 10, 11-year-old or a teenager who's thinking these things, doesn't understand why. you know, and it's such a frustrating situation that I find myself
really
in with it, because especially knowing you as well and how kind you've been to educate me on the subject, you know, and obviously again, I know many people from different backgrounds. You know, I myself am going through a test of my own for a certain disorder, which I'll talk about in another podcast. This is about you, not me. So I'm not going to be a narcissist for once, but for once. But yeah, you know, it's quite upsetting to really, you know, people like they don't feel like they could talk to anyone because, you know, they would be frowned upon, or, you know, oh well, I had this really intrusive. As you said, some of these things can get very personal and very dark in those personal areas. And
it's probably quite common that a lot of these intrusive thoughts cause people to be like, why am I thinking this? You know, I should just not think about it. And like, they just pass it off as just as a thought that's just passing through and everything. And like, there are still thoughts that I have that I don't like talking to anyone, that I haven't talked to anyone about.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is entirely your prerogative. Entirely.
Well, yeah. It's not like I think anything's going to come of it. You know? It's just that... You're right there?
Yeah, no, my microphone fell, sorry. Sorry. Bad timing. Jeez.
Yeah, but, like, it can just kind of, to me, be considered a bit of a secret, you know? It's like, it doesn't really harm me to keep these particular thoughts to myself. If it does start to weigh on me to a degree, that it does start to kind of harm me, whether it's emotionally, mentally, physically, or whatever, you know, because obviously stress can cause physical problems as well.
Yeah.
Then I will open up to it, open up to someone about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
But as it is at the moment, I don't really have a problem with it necessarily. I'm managing my stress well enough.
Yeah.
At the moment, and I'm still getting better with managing my anxiety and my stress.
Yeah.
Like it's basically non-existent at the moment.
Yeah.
Because of this. But there will also be some situations in future that I would have to be put in that would cause more anxiety.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't actually have to go outside at the moment.
Yeah.
So dealing with the OCD and the stress and everything is a lot easier. So I can focus on managing that at the moment. I'm good at managing that at the moment. But when I have to go outside, once everything kind of starts back up again and everything, that's going to kind of bring not everything, I suppose, back on, but it's going to be a bit tough,
It's going to make it a little more tricky.
A little bit, yeah.
Right, well, to end this podcast on a little bit of more of a positive and a high note, again, like I said before, you have come 1,000 miles compared to when I first met you, and you have overcome.
I didn't think so, yeah.
You have overcome a lot in the last few years that I honestly am very, very proud of you for, and I would.
That's disregarding the years before as well.
Exactly, and I would absolutely call you an inspiration about how you get through every day. And again, I'm very, very grateful that you came on to do this podcast, talk to me about it, and educate myself and anyone else that might watch this. And you know, so just to end this off on, if someone out there, let's say, thinks they're suffering with OCD, or they are suffering with it and they're struggling and they don't know how to deal with it, what would you say to them right now? What would you say, as someone who suffers with OCD yourself? What would you say to them to encourage them or make them feel better, that kind of thing?
Learn to be more positive. It's not easy, but there are ways to change your perspective on any situation. A massive thing that helped me was looking at things in a more positive light. That's basically how I manage anxiety a lot more now. There's a bright side to everything, basically, even the OCD in itself. Like, for example, I personally feel I'm a lot more empathetic. I feel like I'm a lot more patient than what I would have been with. I mean, I personally, as far as we're aware, I've been born with OCD, so I don't really know. I can't really say there was a before and after.
Yeah.
I can just kind of say based on, you know, how other people kind of hold them. Like, I don't know how it would have been without it. But as far as I can tell, it has helped me learn to be more empathetic and patient and all the other stuff.
And everything else.
And everything else. But yeah, take the good lessons on board. Take the good lessons on board, and yeah, learn to be more positive about things, and find a way. Yeah, find a way to get the right help for it. I personally found hypnotherapy worked wonders for me.
Yeah.
But it might not be anyone else's cup of tea. But yeah, patience is another big thing. I've said a couple of times already in this podcast, OCD is one of the longer treatments to carry out. You know, it's one of the disorders that takes longer to treat.
Yeah.
And not cure. I don't mean cure when I say treat. I mean treat. Manage.
Yeah.
To a degree, it can be considered cured eventually. Probably, but
probably, but yeah,
probably.
You learn to manage it and get through every day.
Yeah, basically, take it day by day. Make plans if you can. You know, don't push yourself. Don't put too much on your plate.
Absolutely. Couldn't have.
I don't want, I say that knowing that I'm trying to not put too much advice into one thing.
Yeah. No, I get where you come from. It's like, I want it to be nice, but realistic.
It's all kind of realistic. You don't have to do. No one has to do all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just from your perspective.
What works for them is what works for them.
Yeah.
Search themselves for what they reckon would work.
Yeah.
And as frustrating as it is, it can also take quite a bit of trial and error. Yeah. I've been through quite a few different therapists and counsellors before I found hypnotherapy worked. You know, I've been through quite a few different things before I found this, essentially. Yeah. And even this isn't probably going to be the only thing that I'm going to be doing to help with this.
Absolutely. It's a wide spectrum of different things to try, and it's having the patience to go through each and every one slowly, at your own speed and at your own pace.
Try to picture the you want to be and work towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I've tried to do for the last few years. Yeah.
I like seeing a future, kind of an ideal version of myself that I want to be, and I like working towards it.
A musical legend.
Yes. And then there are people that understand.
Yeah.
There are people that understand. Don't just look to people who have it to understand, because there are people who are empathetic without having it.
Absolutely. And you are not alone. There are
millions
of people.
Definitely not.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you very much, Josh, for joining me on this. Down below in the description for anyone who is interested, I shall leave information about OCD, different websites, the NHS site, everything like that. I'll leave a bunch of information down there as well. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, spread it around. The more people that learn about this, the more people will stop stereotyping stuff. So please share it around. And again, be respectful in the comments and be respectful on the page as well. So thank you very much, Josh. Thank you to everyone who watched. And we'll see you again soon at some point. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Show me all the places I've never known.